bus terminal, where they leave. And we're gonna leave our car at there. Just didn't want no part of Charlotte. So he said, I'll drop this from home to Hickory. Because I don't want to deal with Charlotte traffic. So he's gonna. We're approved the 7th. We're approved. Which is good. We don't know where she's going yet. Which is, we asked for Somerville, and they usually have rooms, and she acted good last time, so maybe we'll take her. So she'll go down in a transport. And they'll bring her back.
That's what you don't
So, and I'm talking into making her stay. I said, we need a break.
Yeah.
She was up this morning. You never know. She was still till 11. She didn't get up at 7:40. You never know. So she got up this morning. I was hoping she'd sleep a little.
She was hoping your legs would sleep better. Yeah. Not that ready, but I'm mentally ready. We were discussing how she's gonna take a nap that afternoon before we usually leave. But she done like and we used to, and when Bill and I did together, we were aware of it. And she like this guy tonight. And now I'm still with her, so I don't know. But sleep, I put it in the morning anyway. So she's gonna take a nap. Leave on Tuesday. And so we're actually gonna leave here at 1 o'clock in the morning. And seriously. And she's in deep sleep. In the afternoon, take a nap and get up. once you get blind, it's okay. But,
So I think you'll be going, we're on the seventh, we're leaving the seventh, we'll come back on 14th.
good morning, we're leaving the 13th.
Okay, so
We'll be crossing somewhere. Oh,
we'll get back and you'll be gone.
Yeah. And then we get out, and I've got, normally I don't, I never like to rent a house when I'm not there. Not that I think they're gonna tear it up, but if something happens, an emergency, I'm just not real happy about it. And so these people that are already overbooked, the week before that, so I wasn't worried about it, it was off the other day. And we switched to, I said, I'm gonna be leaving that day. Well, first I said, I told you that when you go there, no, that's what they're gonna do. He said, no, we decided to do better. I said, only thing I can do, I said, matter of fact, I'm gonna be leaving the morning that you're coming in the afternoon, that's early. I said, I'll let my son, who is to call me when I'm not here, open the door for you. And I said, we'll get a key inside. And these particular people change their minds. Oh, we live here and I forget that. But the money's good. The money's good.
The money is good.
The money's good. And they can pay. And don't complain. And they're from Brooklyn. And they think the people in the South are dumb. And I looked at him one time, I said, let me ask you something. I said, do you think we're so dumb down here? Why do you think so dumb? You know what his answer was? It's a cheap vacation. I said, okay, whatever.
Oh, yeah, that stick that Gina's had? Yeah, that stick
Because his concert, and she's worse than he is. She's a devil. She'll wonder, why you have that there? Why you have that there? I said, because most people want it there. I said, you come with space to be around. I said, but you know, I said, you can change it if you want it. But just put it back before you leave. I said, your dog don't move furniture. For fun games. I'm doing furniture, but not for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, well, I've been in Brooklyn, we do it this way. I said, well, you're not in Brooklyn right now. You're in the South right now. But I said that money's good. And they don't fuss ever about that. And this year, I'll tell you whatever I get. Yeah, they were expensive. Because the gas is too high. And plus I went up for my rent this year, but my expenses have gone up.
Yeah.
Power bills have gone up and everything else. And they run electricity like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
And, well, you went up $100. I said, let me tell you something. I said, you take what you have to pay, which is in the prime time, $7.50. I said, tell me how many more you can find that can speak 10 people and that you know's clean and you got somebody you can reach out and touch if you have an emergency. I said, just let me know. And they all came up. Well, we didn't think about that. I said, some of the things I know how to pay on my own. I said, but like now, he's now. And the plumbing, I don't do that right now. I can unstop the toilet and I can unstop the sink most of the time. But when it starts coming out from the drain now, I don't go out. I don't have the equipment.
Yeah.
But I know. And they home you the week before the first comes. So you have no opportunity to add that. Yeah. I just thank you, Lord. You strong me out and get out of here. paper, fruit, vegetable. No, don't even think about it.
Yeah.
It'll slap you in the face. It'll slap. Okay. I've been there.
Yeah.
If you talk to somebody who's been there, you'll take my word, dog. Say that the Lord's with you. Home free. The deal. Oh, you think you got it bad now? But this year they're going into more, a spur of the month. Okay, well, we're not gonna be able to come on. Still have a night for that. When somebody gets sick or accident or something, you can, they knew this 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Not the day before they were alive.
Yes.
You knew you had the money or you knew you didn't have the money. And you didn't want to face the facts. What do you mean? I said, you didn't want to tell me. I said, listen, hey, Big Brother didn't tell me. He said, hey, we're not going to be able to come. And I said, okay, I've got time to find somebody else. But the morning of the time you're supposed to be here for, they ain't the time to tell.
That's not right.
I said, I don't mind. I said, if things come up, my life, yeah. But don't be a chicken and wait for an hour before you're supposed to be here.
Yeah.
You don't want to face
They
it.
knew what the gas prices were.
Yeah. Gas prices here are high. But they ain't that much higher, really, if you look at it.
It depends, going through the states.
Yeah, it depends on that.
But, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that if you got this vacation, you put money back. You put money back for it. Yes.
That's what I did.
That's what Brett's going for his vacation.
That's what it's true. That's what you want to start saving. So I don't have to come.
One of his co-workers wanted to borrow the gas card from the company to get gas in his car so he could work.
My boss said, it's part of his own house, because he has rental vehicle, he never did it. He goes, well, you switch me, you drive my personal car, I spend how much money to pay for gas? When you not have money, but and you pay it.
That's probably why he don't have money for gas. Roommates don't work.
Well, the one guy doesn't work very much. The other two got fired. I don't know if they better found him. He was going to find somewhere else and go somewhere else and get rid of the rest of them. But he never did. He let them talk him into, re-sign their lease. That's why they went to the rent. No, the other two got moved back to New Jersey or found their job. We keep flying. I'm lost about retiring. When they're on oil.
My daddy, when he was in other convention, he went to Japan 1 year on a convention over there. And then he went to Germany 1 year. And what he did, he made with all the coins, money that where he done some change. Instead of turning it back in, he made a bracelet for my mother, how to make a bracelet for my mother and me. And this one is my German. Yeah, got two of each of them. They don't, they go on. Anyway, if I lose one, I'm okay. And they're big, you don't get that, they make a racket when you hit. All the coins. Okay, this is German. Now, the Japanese coins are like fascinating. They got a lot of trees and stuff, green, plants in there. This one just got.
Who's doing that, what time is it? All of us?
I can number today.
Maybe they're all, all places.
There's Terry, so there's Bobby.
Yeah, Bobby and Mike is here.
There's
There's Mark and Becky.
Pastor.
And I think Brendan and Mark. Well, yeah, there you are. See both of them. Maybe she's there. First of all, you and I would want to know the word today. And with that,
Be careful what you say. The red light is on, which means it's live.
is your car doing okay, Mike, since you got that on the thing? Good. Sometimes, there you go.
Now, matter of fact, I left a Google review on the place that did the work was this Toyota dealership in just south of Richmond, a local called Loyalty Toyota. And the minute we drove in there, we were greeted. They took care of us. They took the car in to look at it right away. Within, so they took us to a restaurant, had the driver take us someplace to buy lunch. Came and picked us up. Had a written estimate ready for us by the time we got back. The only problem we had was the insurance. State Farm.
Yeah, that's what she said, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, but, matter of fact, I left a Google review for the two guys. The guy who took care of us, the assistant service manager, was so pleasant. So, he would call us on a regular basis.
That's unusual. Very unusual.
Yeah, just to let you know, there's one part that we're waiting for, and it's, started. This is, we got the part, it's going to be installed this afternoon, and we'll take it for a test drive, and we'll let you know what happens, and we did. He says, one of the things that was missing, he says that we're just going to put it in, because it's a small hose, it's not a big deal. And he says, every step of the way. So, yeah.
That's great. Your Lord will get you there.
You can say that again.
Mm-hmm.
Hunt, how you doing? Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. No problem.
I saw a guy had a shirt on that says, "It's really strange being the same age as old people."
Yeah.
She's 90, and she was older. She
Right.
was older people.
You're old as they are.
You think you are.
Hey, Brenda.
Here I am.
Yeah, no,
You want that? You never know.
I know.
You have to lift it.
Oh,
Where's everything?
It's an old Carpenter song.
That's it. that's my wife's.
I found it on the,
I got it, we love her Christmas.
Yeah.
We get that all the time.
it's not an issue. I knew you would.
Talk about a
love
gift.
the
Talk about a gift.
And if my sister wasn't here, I would.
Yeah.
Good morning,
She's
Dave.
at the wedding dress pick her out thing. My godchild's getting married. I'm really old. I'm old.
Oh, Hunt, give me a break.
We don't do that.
Well, now that you want to be news today.
But now it just kind of just slaps me in the face.
Hunt, your hearing aid is falling out. Hey! Hey! On that note, good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Julie. Before we start with the lesson, why don't we open with a word of prayer this morning? Father, thank you for gathering us together here. We pray for our family and our friends and our loved ones who can't be here with us right now. We just pray that that you would watch over them and take care of them and in whatever way they need. And we ask that you provide us with open ears and open heads and open hearts to take your word in, whether it's during the Sunday school time, the kids in the other room, the other classes, Lord, or preaching time to follow. I just ask for you to touch us in a special way today. Thank you for our time together and all that are gathered here. We just lift all these things up to you in Jesus' name. Amen. We're going to be looking at, it's in the book that we're using, Lessons from the Life of Moses. Technically it's chapter 4, Toppling Those Idols. And it goes through, we're going to be going through this week, probably this week, next week, the plagues. Verse that I came across with Leviticus 26:1 says, Ye shall make you no idols, nor graven image, neither rear you up a standing image, neither shall ye set up any image of stone in your land to bow down unto it, for I am the Lord your God. And it's from Leviticus. It's like a restatement of the commandment in Exodus chapter 20, verses 3 and 4. The first of the 10 commandments, which, if you just, in Exodus chapter 20, and God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. In verse 4, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. And it goes on. So I don't think there's any question that what does God think of idols? He's not a big fan. And throughout the Bible, the idea of idols, whether they're carved, they're molded, or an idol of the heart, it's spoken of harshly, spoken against harshly by the Lord, by his prophets. And the history of the Jewish people, throughout most of the Old Testament is one of continually being chastised for turning from the Lord to their idols. And in 1 Samuel, it's kind of a funny story when you think about it. The story of the Philistines captured the ark in battle, and that's when Eli's sons were killed in the battle. Eli fell over backwards and died, but the Philistines captured the ark, put it in the house of their god, Dagon. So they go in to see it the next morning, and their god, Dagon, is fallen on his face in front of the ark. So what do? They pick up Dagon. Notice Dagon doesn't pick himself up. They pick Dagon up and they put him back on his little stand. Next morning they go in, there's Dagon again. Not only is he face down before the ark, but his hands and his head have been cut off. And they were left on the threshold. And it said, the Bible says that the priests were afraid to step on the threshold because Dagon's, head and hands were on the threshold. But after that, they decided, we're going to get rid of this thing. It's causing problems for us. So they ship it off to other cities, and people get sores all over them, and then they decide to ship it back to the. And it says, we're going to get rid of this thing. You know, they send it back to the Jews. You'd think, after all that, with the Ark of God in their presence, and they have all these problems with their idols, you'd think they'd say, ooh, maybe there is something to this God. But no. And that's what happens when an idol grabs hold of a heart. It's the idol all of a sudden is sort of in control. But the false gods, the idols, they're despised by God, who is, as we learned about from Danny's lessons, he's sovereign, he's faithful, and he's holy. We're going to learn a little bit more about that going through the plagues. Last week, Danny finished off with, we were able to listen, we were picking Rowan up, and we heard bits and pieces of Danny's lesson, and he finished up with the verse from Hebrews 13:5 says, "For he hath said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee." That's a great promise. And the question is, have you ever been in a position to lean on what you know about God? Because a lot of us, we learn things, we know things, but sometimes something happens, and I know a lot of people go through this, where you really have to, okay, I know God is sovereign, but I'm in this position. Can I really trust what's going to happen next? And just when I was thinking about this, I thought about when Bobby and I were in Russia, the first time we went to go visit Brianna. We adopted her, Rowan's mom. We adopted her from Russia. And we have a lot of stories for that trip, but one of them was we arrived in St. Petersburg, got off the plane, grabbed our luggage, and we're in this big, dark room where everyone fills out, if you travel, you know the customs forms you're supposed to fill out. Okay. They had no customs forms in English. All they had them in was Russian. And so I went up to one of the guards who's with his machine gun, and I said, and I held up the form, I says, English? He goes, and so Bobby, and pretty soon the room is empty. It's just Bobby and I with these guards and stuff. And so what do? All of a sudden, a lady walks up to us and says to us in, with a Russian accent, but in English, "Can I help you with the form?" I said, "There are no English forms. Do you know where I can get some?" She says, "I'll translate the form, and you tell me what to fill in." And you know what's on those forms? How much cash are you carrying? It's all sorts of stuff. And do you have anything to declare? Well, one of the things we had with us, that people took up a collection, they knew we were going to visit this orphanage in Russia. We had this big box with 150 Beanie Babies in it for the kids in the orphanage. So do you have anything to declare? Anyways. So she goes through the form, she says, okay, sign here. Okay, got the form, I went to grab our stuff, I went to turn around to say thank you to her, and she was gone. She just, I don't know where she went, but all of a sudden she was gone. So we walked out the door with our forms and our visas and our passports, went through their little, x-ray machine, went to the thing where they stamp the visas and stamp the forms and all that sort of stuff in your passport. No problem. So, we had to trust in something. We had no idea what this woman was, anyways. We knew in our heads that God was sovereign. But we kind of learned there that, yeah, even in a foreign place like that, God is sovereign. So we had to trust in the Lord for something. Moses is sort of in the same spot. He knows all about God. God's been teaching him these lessons, but Moses is in the hot seat now. The Hebrew people hated him. From Danny's lesson we learned, their workload was increased because they had to get their own straw for bricks, and Pharaoh wouldn't decrease the quota of bricks. So the Hebrew people kind of hate him. So he approached them again in obedience to what the Lord asked him to do. And in chapter 6, verse 9, he runs into, and Moses spake so unto the children of Israel, but they hearkened not unto Moses for anguish of spirit and for cruel bondage. So they're not going to listen to him. So, and Pharaoh, you think Pharaoh considered Moses kind of a joke? Let my people go. Pharaoh is large and in charge. He's the king of one of the most powerful nations on earth at the time. And he's thinking about, as I think about this, did Pharaoh have in the back of his mind, he was able to use God's instructions to Moses, this quote-unquote God of Moses, to make their workload harder and to make Moses look like an idiot to people. So where's Moses now? He's kind of stuck. So Moses repeats to the Lord, after being instructed to go speak to Pharaoh again in verse 12, it says, and Moses spake before the Lord, saying, behold, the children of Israel have not hearkened unto me. How then shall Pharaoh hear me, who am of uncircumcised lips? But God insisted in verse 13, and the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, and gave them a charge unto the children of Israel and unto Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. So God insists, and chapter 6 ends with Moses wondering how this is going to work out. It says, and Moses said before the Lord, behold, I am of uncircumcised lips, and how shall Pharaoh hearken unto me? So he's questioning, but I don't think he's necessarily doubting. But I think at this point, God is merciful. We're just he's just asked Moses to do something, and Moses has to step out in faith and trust in this sovereign, holy, faithful God. God has a plan. In Exodus chapter 7, verses 1 through 5, it says, and the Lord said unto Moses, see, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet. Thou shalt speak all that I command thee, and Aaron thy brother shall speak unto Pharaoh, that he send the children of Israel out of his land. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, we've talked about that a bunch of times, and multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. But Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you, that I may lay my hand upon Egypt, and bring forth mine armies, and my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt, by great judgments. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I stretch forth mine hand upon Egypt, and bring out the children of Israel from among them. So you've got this bold statement here that contradicts the circumstances. And one of the things when you think about it, how would we react if the Lord says, yeah, you need to go do this in spite of the circumstances. You need to visit this guy and talk to him again. How would we react? I can only think what Moses was feeling at the time. Okay, God, but I don't know. But this is, as bold and almost even arrogant as God sounds here, it's completely in line with his sovereignty. God can't be arrogant because God is God. But it's completely in line with his holiness and his faithfulness. Moses has learned all this. Now it's time for Moses to put into his life, do with his life the things that he knows that God is capable of fulfilling through him. So what was his reaction? He and Aaron, in verses 6 and 7, and Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded them, so did they. And Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron 83 years old, when they spake unto Pharaoh. So Moses and Aaron are on board. And by the way, they're 80 and 87 years old, almost as old as Hunt over here. Not quite. So you think about it, God just said to these two senior citizens, go talk to this powerful king yet again, who you think really doesn't want to hear you. You're gonna see what's gonna happen. So now what? Okay, Moses and Aaron return, in verses 8 and 9, and the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, when Pharaoh shall speak unto you, saying, show a miracle for you, then thou shalt say unto Aaron, take thy rod and cast it before Pharaoh, and it shall become a serpent. So they do that as they're instructed. However, Pharaoh's sorcerers and his magicians are able to duplicate the staff to serpent transformation. The book says, false gods attempt, as far as possible, to counterfeit what the true God is able to do. Okay, and as a matter of fact, one of the things the book says is that these magicians their names were Jannes and Jambres. In 2 Timothy 3:8 says, as Jannes and Jambres withstood Moses with their corrupt minds, as when Paul writes that. So, but despite the fact that Aaron's staff turned into a serpent, 8 the staffs turned into serpent of the magicians, Pharaoh wouldn't relent. And I'm wondering if at this point, it said, we read before, we've read many times, God hardened his heart. Maybe he couldn't relent at this point. It occurred to me that no matter what he saw, and now he's especially bolstered because of the fact that his people could throw their staffs down and they became snakes. So, hey, my guys are as good as your God. So maybe he couldn't. We know he wouldn't, but perhaps he couldn't relent. Maybe because in verse 13 it says, and he, meaning God, hardened Pharaoh's heart, that he hearkened not unto them, as the Lord had said. So Pharaoh's heart is hardened despite this miracle of the staffs being turned into snakes and Aaron's staff eating the other ones. He wouldn't change. Any comments or thoughts on any of this so far? No. Okay, the next steps, starting with the plagues, are God's repudiation of the Egyptian gods. We'll kind of talk about each one of them. One by one, he humiliates the gods of Egypt. Verse 14, we see the first plague, water turned into blood, verses 14 through 17. And the Lord said unto Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hardened, he refuseth to let the people go. Get thee unto Pharaoh in the morning. Lo, he goeth out unto the water, and thou shalt stand by the river's brink against he come out. And the rod which was turned into a serpent shalt thou take in thine hand, and thou shalt say unto him, the Lord God of the Hebrews hath sent me unto thee, saying, let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. And behold, hitherto thou wouldst not hear. Thus saith the Lord, in this thou shalt know that I am the Lord. Behold, I will smite with the rod that is in mine hand upon the waters which are in the river, and they shall be turned to blood. Okay. Note that, Pharaoh must be going out on his yacht. Moses goes out to see him and says, because you're not listening, then the river's going to be turned to blood. Does what the Lord said, voila. River's turned into blood. And it says that all the fish in the river died, and the water was undrinkable. Think of the stench. Dead fish.
Not just blood. Not the smell.
Unrefrigerated blood.
Millions and millions of gallons of blood.
Yeah.
Yes. Huge stench.
Yeah. So, and then in verses 19 and 20, and the Lord spake unto Moses, say unto Aaron, take thy rod and stretch out thine hand upon the waters of Egypt, not just the river, upon their streams, upon their rivers, and upon their ponds, and upon all their pools of water, that they may become blood, that there may be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, both in the vessels of wood and vessels of water. And Moses and Aaron did so as the Lord commanded, and he lifted up the rod and smote the waters that were in the river, in the sight of Pharaoh, and in all the sight of his servants, and all the waters that were in the river were turned to blood. Wait, he's talking though about all the water in Egypt turned to blood. So you turn on your faucet. If you have enough water pressure, anyways, but blood. And I can't imagine that. But then again, as almost, we'll talk about this in a few minutes, but in verse 22, and the magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, neither did he hearken unto them as the Lord had said. So can you imagine all the water in our lives being turned into blood? This lasted for a week. Okay, and the book that we're using indicates that the plague was intended as a judgment on Apis, the bull god of the Nile, and Isis, the goddess of the Nile, who were worshipped because the Nile was crucial to life in Egypt. Question, was God's credibility impacted by Pharaoh's sorcerer's ability to duplicate the plague? That's one of those yes and no answers. Depends whose perspective you're looking at it from, I think. I think from Pharaoh's perspective, yeah, my guys do the same thing as your God. He's just going to blow the whole thing off. But we all, as believers, we understand that nobody performs these types of supernatural acts without God permitting it. And Pharaoh's not on board with God, so therefore that's going to mean nothing to him. In the eyes of the Egyptians, at least for the time being, I think there was a perception that their guys were godlike. Maybe. But after the next couple of there's more on that. But I think from the casual observer's view, it's like, well, these guys are doing all this stuff. How good is God?
I had a thought on that. And the first was, where did they get the water to turn to blood?
Yeah.
Because according to this, all would turn to blood. And say they did have water turn to blood. I read a commentary that said that there was red soot in Egypt, that they probably, when they were trying to do their little thing, put the soot into the water to make it appear to be like blood.
Yeah.
But the biggest question is where they found the blood. The water turned to blood. Because it all was turned to blood, apparently.
So, yeah, good question. So, but there's, obviously God permitted it. And it's almost like, well, we'll talk about this. Yeah, we'll have time. But wait, there's more. Then the second plague, frogs everywhere, verses 1 through 4 of chapter 8. And the Lord spake unto Moses, Go unto Pharaoh, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Let my people go, that they may serve me. And if thou refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite all thy borders with frogs. And the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into thine house, and into thy bedchamber, and upon thy bed, and into the house of thy servants, and upon thy people, and into thine ovens, and into thy kneading troughs. And the frog shall come up both on thee, and upon thy people, and upon all thy servants. Frogs were sacred to the Egyptian goddess, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, Heket, Hequet, as symbols of fertility. Not so much now as symbols of disgustingness to me, but anyways.
They were quite fertile.
Pardon me?
The frogs were quite fertile.
And they get into everything, even into the food prep. Danny, what would an operating room look like?
We shut down.
Yeah, I think so. Can you picture? Okay, when we first moved down here, we lived down in Merle's Inlet. And Bobby was disgusted by all these little green frogs that were on the outside of our windows, And you're doing this, she's like, oh, heaven forbid anything ever came into the house. But I mean, and if our reaction to this is something as innocent as the little tree frogs that stick to the outside of the windows and make all those noises, what would it be like to have frogs into everything? So, once more though, in verse 7, where am I? Here it is. And the magicians did so with their enchantments and brought up frogs upon the land of Egypt. Okay? I wonder if Moses and Aaron were frustrated. But it's kind of like when the plague happens, it's like, yes, God is really showing it. Oh, these guys are doing the same thing. Okay, but the next thing starts a separation between God and the wannabes in verse 8. This next step. Verse 8, then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, entreat the Lord that he may take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go that they may do sacrifice unto the Lord. Wow, there's a break. Is Pharaoh softening? Good news, bad news. And then down in verses 12 through 15. And Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, and Moses cried unto the Lord because of the frogs which he had brought against Pharaoh. And the Lord did according to the word of Moses, and the frogs died out of the houses, out of the villages, and out of the fields, and they gathered them together upon heaps, and the land stank. So, what happened? But when Pharaoh saw that there was respite, he hardened his heart and hearkened not unto them as the Lord had said. Okay. In partial answer to the question before about God's credibility being impacted, note that Pharaoh's guys could duplicate some of these things, but they couldn't stop them. Nowhere does it say, if they were so good, why didn't they turn the river back to water? Why didn't they get rid of the frogs? Doesn't happen. They could copycat, but they could not originate. And there was no creativity in them, because it's not like they said, oh yeah, he turned the water into blood, look, we're going to turn something into something else or whatever. No, they could just copy, and and once again, it took God to remove the frogs, not the people, not the magicians. So, any thoughts or questions on frogs?
Yeah. Again, I was listening to study. The funny thing is that why would they make more frogs?
Right.
They're already inundated with frogs, and now they're putting more frogs in there.
Yeah.
I think some of the Egyptians may be like, excuse me, Pharaoh, why are you making
Yeah.
more frogs? They're already getting into everything. And then God didn't do as Pharaoh asked Moses. He said, get rid of them out of the land. He just killed them.
Yeah.
So now they were, not only were there frogs all over the land, but now they were decaying and smelling.
I mean, when you think about it, God chose these particular plagues, knowing that they could be duplicated. He knew. He could have chose something that couldn't be.
And he
had a
yeah.
purpose.
Yeah, and he allowed him to do it because it's kind of like when we finish the next point. I have something to add to that about the. Anyways.
Could not this be one way God shows us how he hardened Pharaoh's heart?
That's what
Allowing these things he's showing us in Holy Writ, because he said he was going to harden his heart. And so could not this be, he's allowing certain things to show us one way he's hardened his heart.
And this,
does that not happen to us?
Yeah.
We see that.
We get, it's part of, in terms of the, probably I haven't finished it yet, but next week's lesson, do we not make our own frogs? And out of, in our own, we do things in our own power, and we feel like we're so good because we can do this, and I don't really need God to do this because I can do this, and you build up your own little idol of myself or my power or my this or my that or whatever it is, and you harden your heart. It's the Lord that's hardening hearts here. So, there's a lesson. Watch out. So, but that's probably more for next week. So, the third plague, infestation of lice. This is getting worse. This is gross. Exodus 8 verses 16 and 17. And the Lord said unto Moses, say unto Aaron, Stretch out thy rod and smite the dust of the land, that it may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And they did so, for Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod and smote the dust of the earth, and it became lice in man and in beast. All the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt. This is disgusting. How nasty is it for a little kid to come home from school with head lice? And we get all, it's disgusting. Now imagine these critters everywhere, in everything, in the animals, in the people. And the Egyptian god of the desert, his name was Set, was responsible for protecting the land from insects. Okay, Set, how's it working out for you on that one? And for the first time, in verse 18, it says, and the magicians did so with their enchantments to bring forth lice, but they could not. So there were lice upon man and beast. And by the admission of the magicians, verse 19, then the magicians said unto Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. And Pharaoh's heart was still hardened. And despite the failure of his guys, it says here, like Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he hearkened not unto them as the Lord had said. Okay, so the unspoken revelation here is that the idols and the magicians, not the idols, not the magicians either, nobody could protect Egypt. Nobody could protect the land. Nobody could protect the people. Even Pharaoh couldn't protect himself, because Pharaoh had this stuff happen to him. But the only thing the magicians could do was to bring harm. All they could do, it's like Danny said, what, more frogs? Same thing with the blood. What, more blood? So they could only bring harm. And by allowing the fakes to briefly succeed, God set them up for a huge downfall. And it's sort of like watching an incompetent coworker receive praise for his or her initial achievements, only to have some major failure down the road wipe out any good that may have occurred. And while I was reading some things about this, I thought about there was a guy, not at the bank I worked for, but in a competing bank in town. This is up in New Hampshire. Back in the late 80s, and he was smart. He was one of these. He was very, very, very smart. He did, and this is back in the days when you had spreadsheets. If you did spreadsheets, you were special. He did spreadsheets. Okay, spreadsheets ruled, and everyone was like, oh. And this guy booked loans at his bank, and he was going to town. He went, and he was only in his 20s, and he went from being just a commercial loan officer to being a senior vice president in no time at all. Come to find out, his spreadsheets were wonderful, but the information on them wasn't, because, and this happened after, long story behind it, but the FDIC shut down a bunch of banks up in New Hampshire in the early 1990s. One of the things they found out was that this guy had been taking people's tax returns, and he'd been whiting out the numbers, the real numbers, and typing in his numbers that he wanted, and taking a photocopy of it so that the whiteout didn't show through. He'd take photocopies of those, and so his spreadsheet said, see, here's the number. The income is this. That's what the tax return said. That's what's on my spreadsheet. But it was all like the magicians. It was all smoke and mirrors. He couldn't back it up. And as brilliant as this guy might have been, he was young, handsome, had everything going for him. The smoke and mirrors were his downfall. And he ended up going to jail. Yeah, bank fraud. So, but, it's like, what a downfall. And the same thing is happening, and they don't want to admit it. They did admit it. This is the finger of God. We can't do it. We're powerless, Pharaoh. So, any comments or thoughts or questions on lice?
Not lice.
Okay, good.
Just the
Yeah, and how much worse is it today? I mean, we can see so many things that we think that look real, but they're really fake. I mean, social media, some of the things that you see is, as an example, Rowan on her iPad, she sent us a little message, and it was a, what do you call it? GIF or GIF? How do you pronounce it? The little, yeah, the little thing. It was a little corgi dog lying in bed, looking at an iPad, and the corgi opens his eyes real wide, goes, looks like somebody's coming in the room, takes his iPad, hides it under the pillow, and lays down like this. It's just a quick little thing, but it's obviously, 20 years ago, if you saw that, you'd think, how did they get the dog to do that? I mean, we know it's fake now, but what else is fake that's out there that people see, that they see it, but it makes it so hard for them to be convinced of what's true and real. It's like people nowadays are denying the Holocaust. And talk about foresight. It's one of the things that Dwight Eisenhower did as general of the army back in World War II. Is he ordered every one of those concentration camps to be documented with thousands of pictures. And the reason he did it was because someday someone's going to deny that this ever happened. And people are still denying. It's just like, people are going to deny that this guy at this bank was lying until somebody pulls out the real tax return and says, look at the whiteout, see what he did? If anybody knows about whiteouts, you can scratch the whiteout off and see what's underneath. So, and that's basically what God is doing to these magicians and to the Egyptians. He's scratching off the whiteout to show what's really inside, which is nothing. There is nothing behind the idols. There is nothing behind the magicians. So, and that's only 3 plagues. We have a bunch left to go. Plague 4 in Exodus chapter 8, verses 20 to 24. Flies. Here's verse 20. Okay. And the Lord said unto Moses, go through this again, rise up early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh. Lo, he cometh forth to the water, and say unto him, thus saith the Lord, let my people go, that they may serve me. Else, if thou wilt not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies upon thee, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, and into thy houses, and the houses of the Egyptians shall be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground whereupon they are. And I will sever in that day the land of Goshen in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there, to the end thou mayest know that I am the Lord in the midst of the earth. And I will put a division between my people and thy people. Tomorrow this sign shall be. And the Lord did so, and there came a grievous swarm of flies into the house of Pharaoh, and into his servants' houses, and into all the land of Egypt. The land was corrupted by reason of the swarm of flies. We hate it when there's one fly. Yeah. Rowan's like, there's a fly in the house. Ah, she gets all, she gets all, because there's a fly. Get the fly, Grammy, get the fly, Grammy. And then Bobby says, get the fly, Michael, get the fly, Michael. So, and I just can't imagine, with swarms of flies getting into everything again, kind of like the lice did, kind of like the frogs did. It's totally pervasive. But this time, the Hebrew people, which apparently they weren't before, which I'd never really thought about too much, but the Hebrew people were separated so that they weren't affected. So, the Egyptian sun god is named Re, and is represented by a fly. But this worship symbol was now a sign of corruption, because it says the land was corrupted. The entire land was corrupted by the flies. And the story goes on, if you read through, that Pharaoh negotiates with Moses, and he agrees. He says, well, I'll let the people go, 3 days journey, but don't go too far, and you can't do this, and you got to do this. And Moses is sort of in agreement in part. They even asked Moses to entreat for me. Hey, Moses, say a prayer to your God for me. But Moses listened to Pharaoh, and then verses 31 and 32 of chapter 8. And the Lord did according to the word of Moses, and he removed the swarms of flies from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people. There remained not one. That's wonderful. And now the people oh no. And Pharaoh hardened his heart at this time also, neither would he let the people go. So, here you have, you think, what more does it take? How disgusting is the land of Egypt at this point? Swarms of flies, piles of dead frogs, bloody water, although the water was turned back. And he still wouldn't let the people go. And the reason being, not only did Pharaoh harden his own heart, but God hardened his heart. And there's, as Danny had talked about, the sovereignty of God. Pharaoh probably couldn't, at this point, couldn't let the people go. And because he's the leader, because he's a king, because he's so proud and probably kind of arrogant, he's not going to let the people go no matter what at this point, I don't think. And if you're reading this for the first time, you sort of wonder, well, I would have let the people go. Would you really? Would we really? Do we not get hard-hearted and I'm going to be stubborn because I'm in charge. I'm in charge. I'm in charge. So, the clock on the computer says it's 10:45. I should probably stop here. But any questions or comments or thoughts through plague number 4 with the flies?
I think it's interesting that after plague 3, God separated the children of Israel. So, why did he allow the children of Israel to go through the first 3 plagues? I think it was because when Moses went to tell the people, they wouldn't listen to him. So God wanted to prove to them that, hey, this is my representative.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you. Here's 3 plagues, just a taste of what's going to go on in Egypt. But then he separates them to show them that they are his people. Is my thoughts. I mean,
Yeah,
you prove it.
Oh, wow, maybe this Moses is okay after all.
Well, and it shows God's mercy.
Yes.
He allowed them to go through the first 3, and then he said, but I'm good, and I will take care of you, and so.
And he allows us to go through our stuff. But then, how many times have we been through something but God is merciful? Like you said, I'm glad you brought that out. Because that's at the end of the chapter in the book, which we're obviously not going to get to today, but God is merciful. So any other comments or thoughts? So. Hey Hunt, you want to close us in a word of prayer, please?
Lord, thank you for us being able to gather here today. Please let us take these words and use them in our life. And thank you so much for your gift of giving us your Son. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you.